If you feel lonely, but hopeful and ready to adapt, contribute, and build, and more importantly, if you've been watching my videos, then this one is for you. As you all know, we are all going through a loneliness epidemic. I don't need to pull up the statistics and tell you all of the things that are being created in response to this. All I can tell you is that it's a familiar feeling that I know very well. Besides the fact of being a first gen only child, born to immigrant, older parents, and navigating a new place and space, while also having identities such as being queer, being a masculine center person, and now the possibility of having a neurodivergent brain, yeah, you can say things have been a little challenging. But to be honest, I've gotten to a point where I've accepted that in my human experience that there might always be a level of loneliness. It's this weird feeling of being able to be accepted into every room, but belong to none of them. Always confused by my friendships and relationships that haven't lasted throughout the years. Wondering why in moments of initial connections, feeling like it's the most exciting and interesting and has potential to last, but then it only lasting for the chapter that we're living in that moment. And because of that, I asked myself for so many years, what is wrong with me? I think what's confusing about all this is that I think that I've often been a likable kid. I was playing out in the streets and always at the neighbor's house. And don't get me wrong, like I have my temper and a quick tongue, but who doesn't have their quirks? And so even though I didn't have siblings or close friends throughout the years, there was one thing that I always had. No, not just screens, but that was a very pervasive and influential relationship that I've had. But it's this relationship with myself that feels like it has never left me. As I've gotten older and walking to the beat of my own drum, that beat only got louder, especially as I went through the highs and lows. But more particularly when I went through a low in 2018, when nothing that used to make me happy anymore worked anymore. Whether it was food or drugs or romantic relationships or even my device, I would say I was probably at my first true valley where I didn't know what to do next, how to go about my days, and even care to wake up in the morning. And that's when that beat got louder, reminding me that it's always been there and that it's never left me. And that for as long as I'm still breathing, that it never will. And so I started to get curious and question, what is that very deep yet personal feeling that I feel and that I walk with on a daily basis? A feeling that I'm sometimes distracted by, a feeling, a feeling that oftentimes I'm not paying attention to because I'm so distracted with everything outside of me. A feeling that feels like is often trying to get my attention, but then my mind is off to the next task. And as I started to peel back the layers, not only of my identities and the ones that have been put upon me and the ones that I've put upon myself, I started remembering that there was this inner being inside of me. I started remembering that there was this bigger force that was encapsulating me, that was holding me, that was carrying me throughout all this. In 2018, I ended up moving away from all of my friends and family, and I was living alone for the first time. And so I didn't have anyone or anything to really distract me. Eventually, all the things I did try, I didn't feel anything from it anymore. And so I was left to pay attention to my own thoughts, my own feelings, and seek out that deeper knowing of who I truly am. And so I started to remember that relationship, not only with myself, but with my higher self. And I started to notice not only all the other voices in my head and all the monkeys that are jumping around in there, but that there was this other voice that rose above them all. And so I started putting time into that relationship. I started having a conversation with it. I started to get to know it. And even though it's still a big mystery to me, I know that it's a relationship that has never left me. I know that it's the one relationship that will never leave you and will always love you. and will always want what's best for you. No matter what goes on out there or even within here, this is one relationship that will last throughout the times. And I think the crazy thing about it is that when we don't feel wanted by others, when someone swipes left on us, when a relationship is broken off, when a friendship breaks up, when you leave your job, when you leave your hometown, when you change careers, when your account gets deactivated, that there's this one relationship that it'll never change how it feels about you, and that it'll never leave you, and that it'll give you the attention even when you feel like you don't deserve it, that it'll give to you what this world never can, and that no matter how much artificial intelligence is created, unfortunately, all the shit that's going to come up because of it, there will always be an infinite intelligence that moves within and all around us, always wanting and willing to do what's best for you. Because what's best for you is what's best for them. It's just really a crazy mind fuck and something that can be hard to comprehend sometimes. And to be honest, as much as this relationship matters, I can't help but think, okay, that's great and all, but what about here? What about here in this 2D world, which is now somehow evolving into 3D to some extent and creating some sort of virtual reality? How can I make this experience, this human experience, less lonely? And this is a question that I've been asking since my first YouTube channel 10 years ago. And just wanting to be honest, whether it was my first YouTube channel or even now, I feel like that there's always been an underlying intent to just feel less lonely in this human experience. Not only for me, but for you. And hoping that we can find a way to be included, to be involved, and to belong in this thing called life together. And so, yeah, I am making these YouTube videos for this 100-day challenge that I'm in. But I think more importantly, and just to be honest, open, and transparent, it really is to flare my smoke signals to other like-minded individuals. Because whether we're lonely or alone, have neurodivergent brains or neurotypical brains, or have these devices, I still believe we're supposed to experience life together. Not separated, but as a whole. And as one, in harmony and in peace. And I know that's such the opposite of what we're seeing and experiencing and giving energy to outside of us. But that's why I'm putting myself out here on this thing called the internet and sharing as much of myself, my experiences, and my current mindset right now. Because I'm hoping that whoever is watching on the other side of this, I know for one is a certain kind of person, because I know that what I talk about and the content I create is not for everybody. I know that. I know that I'm not for everybody. And that's okay. I've accepted that. Like I said, I've accepted a level of loneliness at this point. But I don't believe that I'm meant to do life alone. And I don't believe that for you either. And so if you're still watching this, I hope that you consider to have the courage to connect by using this cool new tool called the internet. And that if I have the courage to post this video, and then you might possibly have the courage to comment or DM or email or whatever, that we can eventually take this connection offline. I know that that's a big ask. I know that that's an uncomfortable consideration. But also, why else are you here? Like specifically, if you're watching me, why else are you here? There are so many more other channels that you can be on, so many other people you could be watching, definitely more interesting, definitely more strategic, definitely more engaging, definitely more jump, edit, cut, cool effects things that they're doing. Definitely. So if you're still here, then please tell me why. As you've noticed, potentially have noticed, that I like to skip the small talk, and that a sense of awareness, specifically self-awareness, is important, because it's important to be leaders in our own lives and eventually lead the people that we choose to surround ourselves with. And again, for me, leadership is not about being at the top or being at the head or having a whole following. It's just recognizing that you do have power and that you do have influence and that people are listening and that people are watching and that people are wanting some level of guidance and support and help from someone like you. That's literally all that we're here for, is to help each other grow. not to tear each other down. What is the point of that? What is literally the point of that? You know, and that's maybe why I haven't had a lot of friends over the years. You know, because that level of responsibility asks for a certain kind of person, asks for a certain level, a certain kind of character, asks for just a certain way of moving through the world. You know, but even on the simplest terms, you know, I tend to seek out friendships that have a sense of timelessness to it. Timelessness in the sense not only in this 2D, 3D world, we lose our sense of time, but also like transcend every intersectional, siloed, sectioned off, separated group, but also to some extent in hopes of transcending all that's happening in the world on this current planet outside of this time and space. And I'm smiling because I'm like, yeah, man, you are really putting yourself out there. Yeah, it's a certain kind of person that I like to spend time with because I don't like to live within separated groups. You know, I prefer to have friends and companions that I can do many activities with. Not everything, of course. That's too much. That would be I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. But like I like to spend time with people that like variety and like flexibility and like to go with the flow, but also have a little bit of structure and is able to hold a conversation, be able to ping pong curiosity, questions off of each other and off of what we're seeing and what we're playing with and what we're experiencing. So like for instance, my typical hangout with my friends is usually a minimum of 4 to 6 hours where we'll have like a brunch or a coffee and croissant. And then we'll move on to like our main activity, which is probably like an event or a gathering of some sort. And then we'll have a late lunch together and then find ourselves exploring the area and the neighborhood and just meandering in like secondhand shops. And then we'll get a snack and possibly we'll head to another event depending on our energy. And you know, if I meet you for the first time or it's still a new friendship, I typically hang out for at least a couple hours. You know, so just even me saying this out loud, I'm like, yeah, you might potentially have a different kind of brain for sure, especially as I continue to learn about it. But I'm just giving you a heads up now, you know, that hoping that after you get to know me through these videos, the quirks that come along with it and the quirks that come along with this personality, that after we do all of this online stuff, I'd really love to do more offline stuff, you know, and I'm about to really, really put myself out there, but I'd like to call in my true community. Not like the buzzword community, but like community, like straight up village, like doing life together, especially right now as the world is changing and transitioning. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if you've been with me for any of my videos, we've been referring to Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And so there's this part in the book that has inspired me to want to take action in this direction and is a reason why I'm showing up on YouTube and trying to meet people where they're at on this thing called the internet and a device. And so why don't I just read it to you and maybe you'll get some context as to why I'm here in the first place. So if you've been with me through some of the other videos, you know that a Heb is a highly evolved being. And throughout the book, Source Infinite Intelligence has often referred to natives and indigenous folks as Hebs, or highly evolved beings. We're coming towards the end of the third book. I want to move a little beyond the part I actually want to talk to you about, but just because to give you some context as to how they got to this point in the conversation. Because right now, the author is asking, well, what do Hebs do? What do Hebs do differently? And how can we become Hebs too? So again, I'm going to read this because I know that if you're still here, then to some extent, we might potentially be aligned in some way or another. So I literally cannot help but want to read a little bit earlier because this book is so dense. Look at this, y'all. This book is so dense that I literally cannot read this book for you, but I can't also help want to read as much as I can if I am referring to it in any way and wanting to read a little bit before and a little bit after just because it's so good and just speaks so true to me and where I'm at in my life right now. And so again, wanting to be open, honest, and transparent, like this is where my current mindset is. This is what I'm currently learning from. This is what I'm currently adopting as beliefs and values and perspectives. So you are very clear and understanding like, okay, this is K short right here, you know, April 2026. Check in with me April 2027 if you're still if you're still being a coward and you haven't connected with me. Come on now. But it can change, but as of right now, from my own research and investigation and observations, like, this book has spoken really true to me in this moment in time. And so I want to share as much of it as possible so that you have a clear understanding as to who you're connecting with. And I want to read this part because it's going to also give some sort of context as to what I'm currently building. Honestly, go get another cup of coffee, go get your tea, go get your matcha, go get your boba, go do that, press pause on this video, and then come back. So basically, the author is trying to catch God kind of like within its own weeds and trying to be like, ha, I got you, which, I think we all try to do at one point or another. It starts, then Hebs do have a value system. Oh yes, of course, but one very unlike most humans. Hebs value that which produces benefit to all. So do we. Yes, but you define benefit so differently. You see greater benefit in throwing a little white sphere at a man with a bat or taking one's clothes off on a big silver screen than in leading offspring to remember life's greatest truths or sourcing a society's spiritual sustenance. So you honor and pay ball players and movie stars more than you do teachers and ministers. In this, you have everything backward, given where you say you want to go as a society. You have not developed very keen powers of observation. Hebs always see what's so and do what works. Humans very often do not. Hebs do not honor those who teach or minister because it is morally right. They do so because it is what works, given where they choose for their society to go. So I just want to go back one really quick. We were talking earlier about how to lead in our own lives and how to lead within societies, communities, and such. And so wanting to point out, leading offspring to remember life's greatest truths, or sourcing a society's spiritual sustenance. To me, that's important. Again, leadership to me is not from primarily masculine positionality, but it can look like leading offspring to remember life's greatest truths and or sourcing society's spiritual sustenance, which is a very different direction to lead in than just for profit and benefit. Source is saying is that humans define benefit so differently. We see it as ball players and movie stars, and that we haven't developed keen powers of observations. And so then the author says, still, where there is a value structure, there must be haves and have-nots. So in Heb societies, it's the teachers who are rich and the ball players who are poor. Source says, there are no have-nots in a Heb society. No one lives in the depths of the degradation to which you have allowed many humans to fall, and no one dies of starvation, as 400 children an hour and 30,000 people a day do on your planet. And there's no such thing as a life of quiet desperation as there is in human work cultures. No, in Heb society, there's no such thing as the destitute and the poor. So, right, like talking about loneliness, it used to be something of a quiet desperation, but now we are all talking about this today. Well, how have they avoided that? How? By applying two basic principles. We are all one, there's enough. Hebs have an awareness of sufficiency and a consciousness that creates it. Through the Heb consciousness of the interrelatedness of all things, nothing is wasted or destroyed of the natural resources on a Heb's home planet. This leaves plenty for everyone, hence, there's enough. The human consciousness of insufficiency, of not enoughness, is the root cause of all worry, all pressure, all competition, all jealousy, all anger, all conflict, and ultimately all killing on your planet. This, plus the human instance on believing in the separation rather than the unity of all things, is what has created 90% of the misery in your lives, the sadness in your history, and the impotence of your previous efforts to make things better for everyone. If you would change these two elements of your consciousness, everything would shift. How? I want to do that, but I don't know how. Give me a tool, not just platitudes. Good, that's fair. So here's a tool. Act as if. Act as if you were all one. Just start acting that way tomorrow. See everyone as you, just having a difficult time. See everyone as you, just wanting a fair chance. See everyone as you, just having a different experience. Try it. Just go around tomorrow and try it. See everyone through new eyes. Then start acting as if there's enough. If you had enough, if you had enough money, enough love, enough time, what would you do differently? Would you share more openly, freely, equitably? That's interesting because we're doing exactly that with our natural resources and being criticized by ecologists for it. I mean, we're acting as if there's enough. What's really interesting is that you act as if the things which you think benefit you are in short supply. So you watch your supply of that very carefully, often even hoarding those things. Yet you play fast and loose with your environment, natural resources, and ecology. So it can only be assumed that you do not think the environment, natural resources, and your ecology benefits you. Or that we're acting as if there's enough. But you aren't. If you were, you would share these resources more equitably. Yet right now, 1/5 of the world's people are using 4/5 of the world's resources. And you show no signs of changing that equation. There is enough for everybody if you would stop thoughtlessly squandering all of it on the privileged few. If all people used resources wisely, you would use less than you do with a few people using them unwisely. Use the resources, but don't abuse the resources. That's all the ecologists are saying. Well, I'm depressed again. You keep making me depressed. You're something, you know that? You're driving down a lonely road, lost, and have forgotten how to get where you say you want to go. Someone comes along and gives you directions. Eureka! You're ecstatic, right? No, you're depressed. Amazing. I'm depressed because I don't see us taking these directions. I don't see us even wanting to. I see us marching right into a wall. And yes, it does depress me. You are not using your powers of observation. I see hundreds of thousands of people cheering as they read this. I see millions recognizing the simple truths here. And I see a new force for change growing in intensity on your planet. Entire thought systems are being discarded. Ways of governing yourself are being abandoned. Economic policies are being revised. Spiritual truths are being re-examined. Your race is awakening. The notices and observations on these pages need not be a source of discouragement. That you recognize them as truth can be tremendously encouraging if you allow this to be the fuel that drives the engine of change. You are the change agent. You are the one who can make a difference in how humans create and experience their lives. But how? What can I do? Be the difference. Be the change. Embody the consciousness of we are all one and there's enough. Change yourself. Capital S, self. Change the world. You have given yourself this book and all the conversations with God material so that you might remember once again how it was to live as highly evolved beings. Wait, we lived this way once before, didn't we? You mentioned earlier that we have lived like this once before. Yes, in what you call ancient times and ancient civilizations. Most of what I have been describing here has been experienced by your race before. Now a part of me wants to be even more depressed. You mean we got here and then lost it all? What's the point of all this going around in circles that we're doing? Evolution. Evolution is not a straight line. You have a chance now to recreate the best experiences of your ancient civilizations while avoiding the worst. You don't have to let personal egos and advanced technology destroy your society this time. You can do it differently. You can make a difference. That could be very exciting to you if you allow it to be. Okay, I get it. And when I allow myself to think of it that way, I am excited. And I will make a difference. Tell me more. I want to remember as much as I can about how it was with us in our advanced ancient civilizations and how it is today with all highly evolved beings. How do they live? They live in clusters, or what your world would call communities. But for the most part, they have abandoned their version of what you call cities or nations. Why? Because cities became too big and no longer supported the purpose of clustering, but worked against that purpose. They produced crowded individuals instead of a clustered community. It's the same on this planet. There's more of a sense of community in our small towns and villages, even in our wide open rural areas, than there is in most of our big cities. Yes, there's only one difference on that score between your world and the other planets we are now discussing, which is the inhabitants of those other planets have learned this. They have observed more closely what works. We, on the other hand, keep creating larger and larger cities, even though we see that they are destroying our very way of life. Yes, we even take pride in our rankings. A metropolitan area moves up from number 12 to number 10 on our list of biggest cities, and everyone thinks that's a cause for celebration. Chambers of Commerce actually advertise it. It is the mark of a primitive society to view regression as progress. You have said that before. You're getting me depressed again. More and more of you are no longer doing this. More and more of you are recreating small, intended communities. So, do you think we should abandon our megacities and return to our towns and villages? I don't have a preference about it one way or another. I am simply making an observation. As always, so what is your observation regarding why we continue to migrate to bigger and bigger cities, even though we see that it is not good for us? Because many of you do not see that it's not good for you. You believe that grouping together in large cities solves problems when it only creates them. It is true that in large cities there are services, there are jobs, there are entertainments which are not and cannot be found in smaller towns and villages. But your mistake is in calling these things valuable when in fact they are detrimental. Aha! You do have a point of view on this. You just gave yourself away. You said we made a mistake. We're headed towards San Jose. Ugh, here we go again. Well, you insist on calling observations judgments and statements of fact preferences. And I know you're seeking greater accuracy in your communications and in your perceptions, so I'm going to call you on this every time. If you're headed towards San Jose, all the while saying you wish to go to Seattle, is it wrong for the bystander of whom you're asking directions to say that you have made a mistake? Is the bystander expressing a preference? I guess not. You guess not? Okay, he's not. Then what is he doing? He's merely saying what's so, given where we say we want to go. Excellent. You've got it. Okay, so honestly and obviously, I can keep going. And especially this next part of the book is talking about quote unquote survival of the fittest. But if that is something that you want me to continue to read, then let me know. And for those who are really about it, can stick with me and I'll make that video for all of you. But for those of you who would prefer to read it on their own, please be my guest. I would absolutely love that for you. And again, recognizing like it may not speak true to you, but at the very least, do your own research, investigate it, observe it, and ask yourself, does this speak true to me right now in this moment? And if it doesn't, toss it. And if it does, cool, adopt it, but then also adapt it and reiterate it for yourself. So what I'm trying to say is, what I'd like to experience on this platform is the potentialities of future friendships and connections. But for me, this is more than a friendship. And because English is such a limited language, I'd like to share some words from Tagalog that I've recently discovered that can better explain the kinds of relationships I'd like to be in, the kinds of friendships I'd like to be in, the kind of connections I'd like to have. And I'm sharing this with you, again, just in open, honest, and transparency, just like, what do I have to lose? And why waste any time? And you having to try and read my mind. Disclaimer, the Filipino culture is still something very new and fresh to me because of my marriage with my partner who's deeply interested and embedded in Filipino culture and wanting to learn about it and understand it specifically from a pre-colonial lens. That's what's garnered my interest and curiosities around it. So I don't want to sit here as an expert and say this is what it means to be Filipino or pre-colonial Filipino or anything like that. But whatever clues it does provide for us right now, especially in this conversation, and that can further explain what I'd like to experience and hopefully what you'd like to experience also, then we shall look at these words, use these words, put the meaning towards them that we would like. So there's 3 words I'd like to share with you. And the first one is kasama. So, kasama means companions walking alongside each other through major life transitions. We are going through a major transition as a society. And as you all know, I'm going through a major life transition myself, moving to a new country, being in a marriage, starting this new career. So, yeah, some kasama would be really cool right now. And so maybe that might be the same for you. Maybe you're going through some major life transitions also, or are just trying to navigate this societal transition and are just wanting companions to walk alongside each other. Hopefully, Kasama turns into Sandu Ugwan, and this is what they call chosen family alliance, strategic and loving. So for me, when I think of this, I think about specifically the queer community and how we've really leaned on the idea of chosen family because unfortunately, for the past 100 years specifically, we've been really isolated and separated. But I really like the word alliance. I mean, to be fully transparent, this was a lens that me and my partner operated from when we decided to get married. I think naturally we both have strategic minds. Maybe that's because we have divergent ways of thinking. But yeah, we recognized that we both had skill sets that the other person doesn't have or is still developing, and that it would be helpful in the continuation of our survival and move towards a level of thriving. And let's be even more honest. Marriage, the concept of marriage, and I can't say if this is the root of it, but I know that there was a phase in the concept of marriage that it really was about different tribes and different groups of people bringing it being the act and the ritual and the ceremony of bringing two different groups of people together strategically. It wasn't necessarily about love and romance as it is today, but it was about like, hey, if our two groups of people come together, we're going to be stronger and better together. And we're going to put our most bachelor and bachelorette members of our group to act as that contract and that agreement between two groups of people so that we can continue on in our survival. So yeah, I know that that's not a very romantic way or subtle way of saying this, but have you looked outside lately? I do think it's important to have some level of strategy and alliance in this, in our choosing of family. And recognizing that the second part of it is loving, and realizing that we're gonna have differences and that we're gonna have conflict and that we're gonna have to navigate through all of the changes that are happening, but that we are better together, that no one can do anything alone, and that when people come together, especially intentional, like-minded, and aligned people come together, the possibilities are endless. And lastly, after starting off as kasama and as companions of walking alongside each other through these major life transitions, and hopefully it turning into sanduuguan of a chosen family and an alliance of strategy and love, ideally I'd like for it to move into bahay-bahayan, which is translated to a household partnership, and in learning how to build a home, but more specifically, to build a village together. I mean, if you think about it, that's a lot of where our ancestors came from. And if you look outside, we are separated by walls. It's like we're just living in boxes from boxes to boxes. You're seeing from apartment to apartment, from studio to studio, from loft to loft. Like there's only 1 to 2 people living in there. And then if it is some sort of a family, like it's then siloed families next to siloed families. And I don't know about you, I know that we're, thankfully, we're not so far removed from our roots as Filipinos in a way, but like it is a very intergenerational household. Like my mom's house back home in Phoenix, like my lola lives there, my mom lives there, her 2 daughters live there, and a couple of their kids live there who the last one just turned 18 a few days ago. So like it's a full house. And that's what was normal back then. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what I think would be helpful moving into this next transition of society. I do think that it can turn into some form of that. And don't get me wrong, they exist. They already exist in one way or another. I do believe in the importance of going back to intergenerational relationships and that we need everybody and that we need each other to teach each other things, whether they're hard skills or soft skills, to be able to move as one, as human beings. And that I don't agree with the ways that we've sectioned groups off by ages. I say this as someone who's grown up with nothing but old people, dying old people in my house, like the house that I was growing up in. It makes sense that like siblingship amongst my peers or around a similar age group is a little difficult and younger, because I didn't have that experience. But nonetheless, an intergenerational, intersectional, and even international village is truly my dream. I think that we're living through an amazing time right now, depending on how you look at it. But this is how I'm choosing to look at it. I'm thinking like, whoa, we're living during a time where you can choose your family. Like you can choose not just based off of blood anymore. Like you can choose based off of like-mindedness and alignment of what you want to build and create together. Like that's mind blowing to me and really something that excites me. But, as in any village, skills are important. All skills are important. And now more than ever, I think some level of survival skills is important. I know it may not seem like it on one side of the spectrum where we think that AI is going to replace us and take over our jobs and is going to do a lot of the things that we didn't want to do in the past. And, that conversation could go on forever. But I do think that there's a level of timelessness in the skills of what it means to survive as a human species and as a human race. Like, what does that look like in the next 50 years? And how do we adapt to that? And so I think, yeah, it is knowing how to build a fire while also learning how to navigate with AI. I do think it's learning how to hunt while also learning how to communicate effectively. Absolutely. I do think it's knowing how to be resourceful while also being well practiced in how to navigate conflict. So yes, D, all of the above. But more importantly, just recognizing that everyone has something to offer and contribute. And it may not necessarily always be in resources or in skills, but I think also in wisdom and in presence and in play and in perspective and in time and in energy, effort and empathy and listening ear and an open heart and a wide armed hug and being held, especially when this shit's about to hit the fan. But yeah, just recognizing that we are living during a time with so much choice right now and maybe a little too much choice. But like the fact that we get to choose each other now. Like I said, you could be watching anybody else. If you're still watching this, it's kind of blowing my mind because I'm like, I know some people's attention span right now. So I'm just like, cool. Like if you're still watching this, like, so you're going to leave a comment? So are you going to DM me? So are we going to continue this conversation? Like, are we going to have the courage to take this the next step further? You tell me. It's important to be honest, open, and transparent, but more importantly, intentional. Again, if you feel like we're like minded, or if you feel like we're on the same wavelength and that we feel aligned, please reach out to me on Instagram at IamKShort and let's connect. Let's see if there's something there. No pressure. Like, I'm just out here putting myself out here, just telling you all my wildest dreams and visions, because if I say this to anyone out in the street, they're gonna be like, okay, if you're still here, I would love to connect with you. Not only start building a relationship, a friendship, a kasama-ship online, but more importantly, offline, so that we can prepare and adapt for our future. So if you do have the courage to do that, I truly look forward to connecting with you, collaborating with you, creating with you. And if you still have somehow made it to the end of this video and you're still watching, I know that we're just getting to know each other. So if there is any questions that you'd like me to answer as honestly and openly and transparently as I can, then go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And I'm more than happy to answer that question in a video. Or like I said, you could DM me and we can have that conversation on a different platform. But again, if you're feeling lonely like I am or I have, and are still feeling hopeful about the future by being ready to adapt and to contribute and to create and to build, then know if it's not me, but that your people are out there. And that I hope that you have the courage to create content, to wave your smoke signals on this thing called social media and to call them in. Look, nobody truly knows what the future is going to hold. So at the very least, if this could be a signpost for you to start calling in your people or having the courage to connect with others, to have the courage to be putting yourself out there, whether it's on the internet or offline in a coffee shop or in a different community space, I encourage you to do so. Again, none of us knows what's to come, but I believe that we're supposed to be doing this thing called life together. All right, y'all. Best of luck on your journey, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye now.